Hey everyone, hope you're having a good week. I'm Max Zambrano here for the cultural trend paper video assignment. For what I chose for my cultural trend, I chose smartphones. And when I chose this, I was kind of debating between whether or not a smartphone was a cultural artifact or a cultural trend. But as I was thinking about it, and as I began to look at some statistics, it seemed more of a trend. I remember even growing up when smartphones, how they were today, came out. The touch screens with all the different apps on them, and it really wasn't too big of a deal back then. But now it's almost like you can't live life without a smartphone, without uh, the device we have, the device I'm recording on right now. It seems like they're vital to almost every aspect of life. I looked up a statistic, and it said in 2010 there were only 62 million smartphone users, and in 2017 there's now 237.6 million smartphone users just in the United States. So you see that the trend's kind of grown over the years, and it has had a upward trajectory, and it's something that's very, very common in the world today. So one of the main things to kind of examine when looking at this as a cultural trend, looking at smartphones as a cultural trend, is the reason for which it was created. All right, so believe it or not, the first smartphone was invented in 1992, before I was even born. So it's kind of crazy to think about because they seem pretty recent. Like I said, even growing up, they didn't seem like they had as much influence as they do now in people's lives. But the first smartphone was invented in 1992, way ahead of its time, and that kept getting worked on, and until eventually the smartphones as we know them today, they came out in 2007. All right, so that is more recent, within the last 10, 11 years, and since then the popularity has grown tremendously. But really, the main reason that the smartphone was invented was for convenience. That's really its major purpose. The smartphone that was invented in 1992 was the first device that could do more than one thing, more than just call on a phone. Right? And obviously now, the phones we have now can do millions and millions of things. It seems like there's almost an app for absolutely everything. So you have access to one's whole life on your phone. There is, your banking information. You can pay bills. You can do all that kind of stuff. You have social media, which is another major thing that phones and cell phones are used for. And there's, like I said, an endless possibility of things you could do on the phone. Another major area to examine when looking at smartphones as a cultural trend is what problems they solved when the smartphone was created. And really, this is closely related to why it was invented. Right? The main reason is for convenience, and that has just grown and grown and escalated over time to where, like I said earlier, almost everything in your life is accessible through one's smartphone. And it's even gotten to the point where businesses they take advantage of it. Most businesses you can pay with an app or online at this point, just with the click of a button. And that's how most businesses they do business now. Same with entertainment. Entertainment's right on your phone with a couple clicks of a button. You could find or watch or read almost anything. So really, your one's whole life can be on this device. Currently, the average time spent on a smartphone for adults over 18 is 2 hours and 51 minutes. So almost 3 hours a day are spent on smartphones. So that just kind of goes to show how much of one's life is invested on a smartphone. Another aspect to examine is what problems the smartphone caused because of its invention, because of its existence. And this is closely related with some of the positives. Like we said, we keep saying over and over, the smartphone can contain one's whole life, basically, on the device. And because of that, if something goes wrong with your phone, if your phone is missing, you feel like you're missing something very, very important, something that is absolutely necessary for your life and for existence. Right? And for this reason, it's easy to become addicted to one's phone. Right? It's also closely related with social media. And I didn't choose to talk about social media, but that plays a big part into smartphones, right? We have cameras, again, click of a button, and we could scroll through feeds for days. So it's closely related, and with the phones and with social media and text messaging, you get notifications, right? And what notifications and messages do, when you see them on your phone, you get happy, right? It releases dopamine in your brain, which is the same chemical reaction that causes you to be addicted to things like drugs or sex or whatever it might be. So it can become very easy to get addicted to one's phone, right? And just to simply desire, likes on Facebook or messages or just attention on your phone, and you can become addicted to that and chase that rush and try to get the dopamine, try to get all the likes and followers and try to get tons and tons of messages, and you can just become consumed with what is on your smartphone. Right, so those are some kind of problems that the smartphones brought. Smartphones have also been linked to anxiety and stress and depression. Right, studies have shown that people who spend less than a half hour on their smartphones each day usually have overall better mental health and are more joyful. They're more happy, and their lives seem to be better. So, because of the dopamine and everything that the phones can release in your mind, if you're on it too much, you can be basing your joy on something that is temporary, and constantly can be desiring more. So another question to ask is, how has smartphones just affected the culture? How has it impacted everybody culturally? And it's easy to be able to say that if you don't have a smartphone in this culture, in this day and age, then you're kind of left behind almost, right? They're absolutely vital to our culture. Anywhere you go, you walk down the street, people are on their phones. It's almost everywhere you go, people are on their phones no matter what, doing something. And like we said, everything is so quick and so easy on the phone. Everything is just a tap away. So people are, obsessed with their phones. Phones seem to be vital for one's lifestyle, right? So culturally, it is, everybody has a phone, right? Almost everybody. And if you don't, usually you are almost an outcast. There's one kid in my youth group who does not have a phone, and everybody's blown away every time he mentions it. So it's almost necessary to have a phone in the culture that we're in if you want to keep up and stay updated with anything. So how do we look at smartphones from a biblical perspective within the aspects of culture? So Christians have already kind of been on the smartphone platform, right? There's tons of Bible apps out there and tools that help you read the Bible. So that is a good thing, right? Apps in the App Store can be used for witnessing, for helping somebody with devotions, for reaching out, whatever it might be. So there is definitely benefits to it in the Christian walk. However, there's also some negatives as well. Because the phone is so vital to one's life, it can be easy to make it an idol, right? To put it in the place of God and to make it number one in your life. Also, it's not correct to be addicted to the phone. We talked about the dopamine rushes that someone gets when they get notifications and when they get likes. And oftentimes people can go to that and look for that for happiness. But that's just a fleeting happiness. As Christians, we're called to find our joy that in Christ, something that doesn't change, something that's established. Christ is what is our rock. He's what is our salvation. So that's what needs to be our happiness, not something that's on a phone and something that's fleeting. So smartphones have, in my personal life, they've helped me and they've also hindered me in some ways. I'll start off with hindered. They've hindered me in ways where I've chosen to do my devotions on my phone in the past, and I would be doing devotions, and then notifications pop down off the screen, and if it's something that was interesting, I would click it, and then I would keep scrolling through, and eventually my devotion was forgotten about, and that kind of put God on the back burner, and that was wrong. And currently right now, some positives. Currently I work as a youth pastor, and the phone has benefited me tremendously, right? For my work, it's very important to be able to connect with the kids and communicate with them and their parents and other leaders in the church. So the phone has been crucial for that. I post on all the social media sites. I'll make calls. I will make text messages, group messages, and be able to talk to multiple people at once, and it just makes work a lot faster and a lot easier. But in the same way, sometimes it can seem like there's no separation from my phone, and there's no time to be spent with just me and God. So there are times where messages come at all hours of the day, and I just need to turn my phone off and make sure I get peace and quiet time with God, because again, it can be easy to put that as an idol and put that as the main focus of one's life. But that's something that we're called to be able to manage, right? And there are times where the phone just needs to be turned off, and it just needs to be time with you and God. So just to kind of to summarize everything I've said, phones, they're really not that bad, and they are everywhere, absolutely everywhere in the culture we live in today. And it's almost necessary to have one to be able to communicate with anybody, or to be able to relate to anybody in any kind of way. So smartphones are not bad, but they do have the cons that come with them, right? So as Christians and as people, we're called to manage our time, right, and manage what we do with our phones, and make sure that we are making time for God and making time for actual personal relationships with people, and not putting the phone above anything else. So it has its benefits, it has its drawbacks, just like anything else, but it can be a tool that can be used to glorify God.